For Creamer Media's Polity, I'm Motshabi, Hoaeane researcher and analyst. Professor Raymond Suttner discusses efforts on moving towards a non-racial, non-sexist and democratic South Africa. Thank you so much for your time, Professor. Now, you go to the great pains of distinguishing Africans who were previously subjected to the most stringent apartheid laws, people who had to present passes on demand from other people who wished to be known as Africans. Doesn't this place a barrier in the way of building non-racialism?
I think we must understand that when we talk about a commitment to non-racialism, there's nothing automatic about non-racialism happening purely because we declare it in our constitution or we make various statements saying we believe in non-racialism. It's very complicated because what you're doing is you're trying to reach a time when race is not an important factor in deciding the future and the present of people. And if you want to realize it, you've got to take proper cognizance of the difference, the different places that people are at the starting blocks. Now, if I, as a white person, say, I am an African, I need to recognize that I'm not an African in the same sense as someone who carried a past. My background gave me certain opportunities that were not available to black South Africans and especially Africans. I didn't carry a pass. I didn't have to live in a Bantustan. I didn't have to go through Bantu education. I was not liable to find myself at the back of a police van. I did find myself actually at the back of a police van, but that was through taking certain decisions which got me involved in breaking the law for political reasons. But in my earlier life, I was not liable to be just picked up and asked where my pass is and then thrown at the back of a van. So it's very important that when we say we believe in inclusiveness, that the form of inclusivity is not at the same time a way of erasing people's experiences. We need to recognize that the historical inequalities of the past are still part of the present for very many people. It's not easy, not as easy for them to get certain jobs because they've not had the opportunities that white people and to some degree colours and Indians. It's also important to understand that the position of all black people is not the same. In the Western Cape, for example, there was what was known as the coloured preference policy, whereby jobs were reserved primarily for coloureds, and that created some sort of animosity. You also have a situation where some coloured people and Indian people fear being overwhelmed by Africans, and they complain that they're being discriminated against. Also, there's controversy about what term you call people. Like some people want to be called so-called coloured, some people want to be called coloured in inverted commas, some people want to be called colours with lower caps. I use coloured in capitals because some people that I respect say that they are not so-called, they are coloured and they have a history of which they are proud. So it's quite complicated, and it's very important that we don't take shortcuts. So what I'm saying is non-racialism as an ideal must be built on the basis of the society that we find with all its wounds. You need to recognize the way in which people have been wounded under apartheid, and in building non-racialism, you have to take full account of that and not simply feel that it's generous to say I'm an African. I'm an African, but the word has two meanings. My loyalty to Africa as a continent makes me an African, but I'm not an African in the same way as someone who carried a pass.
Professor, you make reference to women, but you don't elaborate on its relevance to terminology. How is the argument you present relevant to women?
You see, if we say that women are discriminated against, we need to understand that not all women are sisters in the same way. If you are a washerwoman, your madam is also a woman, but she's in a completely different situation from you. You may have had to get up at 5 o'clock or 4 o'clock in the morning to get to work. You have had to leave your child behind, looked after by someone, and then sometimes as a domestic worker come and look after someone else's children. So I think it's very important that we understand that women who are wealthy have in common the possibility that they may suffer abuse, be raped by their husband or by someone else. But even there, the experience is different in the sense that you are not having to walk in unsafe streets in the same way as a domestic worker or a poor person has to do. Also, if you go to the police station, you are more likely to be listened to than a poor person, a working class person, or an unemployed person, or a person who lives in a shack. So all of these things make women a category that needs to be disaggregated, to be broken down, to understand the difference. Now, there's another reason why I made a brief allusion to women in that article, and that is we used to have a term, chairperson, that was used very often. Some newspapers didn't like it. It wasn't part of their house style. But it was an important usage because when you used the word chairperson, you were saying that being a chair is not the prerogative of men only, chairmen. And that term has sort of disappeared from public discourse and from state and government discourse. And I think it's a problem. If you want to change terminology, you need to debate it. It was important to assert that positions of power are not held by men only, that women are capable and ready and willing to fulfill those positions with skill. And that was the reason for using the word chairperson. That was a claim to power, a claim to the power of women, and was a feminist demand. And to have it simply disappear is a problem in terms of advancing gender equality in this country.
Thank you so much, Professor, for your time. That was Professor Raymond Suttner on building a more equitable society.